Hi folks, this is hopefully going to be a shortish video talking about the changes made to the Star Wars original trilogy. I recently saw the original, I think the original cinema versions of episodes 4, 5 and 6, and since I've watched the 97 special edition and obviously the modern versions as well, obviously I've got a bit of a perspective on the changes and obviously my own opinion. I would like to go through some of the major changes and just basically give you my thoughts on them, because I have watched a lot of videos where people are saying, oh, they ruined this, they did this change, or this change was necessary and blah blah blah. And in my opinion, there's a bit of a perception that George Lucas did ruin the original trilogy in a way by making so many changes. In fact, I saw on Wikipedia that one award he won, somebody said that the newer releases wouldn't have won that award or something like that. So it is pretty major. But yeah, in terms of what I thought of the films, the original releases, which by the way I bought them for someone and I got them online, and I think it was on Amazon, so straight off Amazon. I'm not sure if they were secondhand, I feel like they were, but basically the original was released along with, it was one edition that was released at some point, had a second DVD of the original. Obviously it was, well, it wasn't the best functioning thing ever. It didn't freeze too much, it froze once or twice, but anyway, managed to watch them and it was interesting. What I will say is I can understand why George Lucas wanted to go back and redo it, or not redo it, but enhance it a bit, because some of the graphics were quite dated. Now, you might argue that comes with, any film. Any film's going to be dated at some point, and not every director or producer or whatever is going to go back and modernise it. That just isn't done. That's not the norm. So, I completely understand that argument, and I'm not really going to say anything against it. However, I can understand why George Lucas did it for Star Wars in order to modernise it. Some examples would be, certainly in episode 6, I noticed some of the green screen effects were not the best. There were a lot of scenes that were, like the transitions just didn't flow very well, or there just wasn't a flow at all. For example, in the scene in A New Hope where R2-D2 has just left C-3PO and he's travelling through the rocks in Tatooine, the scene basically just cuts to R2-D2 in the original, whereas in the special edition there's a bit of a pan, which obviously makes it look nicer. So it's just little things like that. And obviously there's the famous scene in the Darth Vader Obi-Wan fight in A New Hope where you can see the stick that Alec Guinness was using as a lightsaber. They obviously didn't generate the lightsaber image very well, so that obviously had to be fixed as well. So I'm of the opinion I can understand why George Lucas wanted to change those things about the films and kind of enhance the graphics and that, and I think he succeeded. It does look a lot better than the original. In terms of the actual scenes, the things that everyone talks about, the first one that I've got on my list is probably the most famous one, the Greedo scene, the hand shot first scene. Well, actually, technically I missed out the rock. George Lucas put a rock in front of R2-D2 when he was hiding from sand people, and people always have a laugh about that, what's the point, blah blah blah. I don't really have an opinion on that, so to be honest, here's the thing, I don't actually have an opinion on many of these, and my opinion is often biased in favour of nostalgia. The first Star Wars I watched was the 97 special edition, around the time The Phantom Menace came out. I watched it in a really weird order. I watched like 4, 6, 1, 5, 2, 3 or something like that. It was really dumb, but hey-ho, can't change the past. I guess my perception is very much based on the order I watched them in and which edition I watched. So if I had watched the very first releases in the cinema back in 77, 80 and 83, maybe my thoughts would be different. Anyway, yeah, the Greedo scene. I probably shouldn't go through explaining all these scenes. I'm going to assume that if you're watching this, you know basically what the scene's about. But the point is, the change was a clip added where Greedo shot, hand dodged, and then shot Greedo, or something like that. I must say, the original does look a lot better, because you kind of, I guess there's more ambiguity about what's happened, and that's only revealed when Greedo's head slumps onto the table, and it's obvious that Han shot him. I did read a bit about this on Wikipedia as well. The reason that this was changed was, well, Lucas claims that this was how he always intended it. I guess make of that what you will, I really don't know. I think the thinking was they didn't want Han to be seen as the one that just, fired on Greedo, not unprovoked, but you know what I mean. They wanted to give Han a reason to shoot, which apparently in American law, Greedo was acting in a threatening way that gave, Han the right to pull out a gun, and I don't understand that stuff, so I'm just going to leave that to one side. But from a casual viewer's perspective, I don't know. I do prefer the original scene. It just looks cleaner in that, but I'm not overly fussed, honestly. As I said, the original scene, I mean, they're both confusing in their own way, but the original one, you get that clear picture at the end of what's happened, whereas the jump cut in the newer scene with Han moving his head out of the way of Greedo's blaster, and yeah, it's a wee bit whack. Anyway, the second one is the Jabba the Hutt scene, although, to be fair, this was originally intended, and I think there's probably more people on Lucas's side with this one. But in episode 4, prior to leaving Tatooine, Han meets Jabba the Hutt. I must say, I actually didn't mind the lack of a Jabba the Hutt scene, because you hear about Jabba, but you don't actually see him in the original, and that does kind of give the Jaws effect, that you don't actually see the villain, or he's not really a villain at this point, he's just someone. You don't really see them, so there's an aura of mystery about him, and I kind of like that. So I guess if I had to choose, I would say I prefer the original, but I'm not overly bothered. It's kind of weird how Jabba just shows up. I mean, to be fair, he is looking for Solo. Solo does offer him money, and I'm aware I've just referred to Han as both Han and Solo in this video so far. I do apologise. Oh yeah, I should say I'll probably put some Star Wars Battlefront gameplay to this or something, because I don't know what else I would do. I would do Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but I don't want to not be able to use my computer for 3 days while it installs. I'm going to ignore my next point, which is Briggs' Darklighter, his scene where him and Luke are kind of talking on Yavin 4. That was added in to give more clarity to that sort of character development, that storyline. I'm just going to leave that, because at the end of the day it sort of makes sense and there's not much to discuss. New Emperor was added in the 2004 Blu-ray edition for episode 5. So we're on to the Empire Strikes Back. Originally, the Emperor was just a kind of green alien with a hood and didn't look anything like Ian McDermott's portrayal of him. And then obviously that was changed later on. What did I think of this? Well, naturally, I think it was acceptable. It was needed because, for continuity's sake. So I really don't have a problem with that. I've not met many people who disagree with that. Although it does make you wonder what could have happened if the Emperor was a kind of green alien slight creature with a hood and all that. Anyway, Boba's voice was changed to match the Attack of the Clones voice of Django. Again, I don't really have an opinion on that. It does kind of keep continuity, but I have heard people that don't like it. The original actor doesn't get credit. He's just wiped from the movie, has no credit and whatnot. So I guess I understand that too. Although if I had to choose, I would probably err on the side of continuity. Oh, here's another one. Surprise, surprise, I don't have an opinion on. The song in Jabba's Palace is different, and I have heard a fair bit of criticism towards the newer song, which does sound a wee bit more out there in terms of... I can't really think of a good word. Someone described it as Disney. One commentator online, or in one video, commentated it as something straight out of Disney, even though it was obviously added before Disney bought Star Wars. Yeah, I kind of get that. Again, not a huge opinion over it. And to be fair, I don't actually remember too much about the original trilogy scene. I mean, the song was it was just there. It wasn't particularly spectacular. It wasn't a memorable scene, put it that way, for me. So, I don't have a huge opinion on that. And interestingly enough, the only thing I noticed in Return of the Jedi that was drastically different in terms of there was a scene not included, other than one I'll speak about in a minute, is the Rancor pit, where the dancer, who I think is called Ula, she falls in. This is in the newer versions of the film. She falls in, and you see the the beast, or I don't think you see the beast actually, but you become aware that there's some threat down there. That's just not included in the original, probably due to time constraints or something like that. But yeah, funnily enough, that's skipped out, and it doesn't really need an opinion because it just wasn't there. Next 4 changes are fairly big ones to conclude the video. Hopefully it's not lasted too long. First one was the Sarlacc pit. There is a difference in the way it looks in the original. It's kind of hard to tell, but there's like no arm. It looks more like the Kraken, tentacly arms, the mouth, everything like that. Regarding the original, it was just like the pit was a monster. And I can see arguments for both sides being, which one, in terms of which one's scarier. I think if I had to choose, the original trilogy definitely does give it more of or less of a cartoonish feel, I guess. Like the newer one, again, if I had to choose, I would choose the original, but the newer one I'm not that fussed with either. I mean, it looks scary enough, but the original, just the fact it's the pit that's the beast, you don't see too much about it. It's, again, kind of the mysterious aura. So yeah, that was a pretty big one that I didn't expect coming, although I had heard about it, but I never expected to see that one, and I must say, yeah, it looked pretty cool in the original releases. Third last, we've got the end celebrations, the scene with other planets. In the newer releases of Return of the Jedi, there are celebrations of other planets included with the celebrations on Endor after the Death Star is destroyed, and these are obviously not shown in the original releases of the film. I think the planets showed were Coruscant, Tatooine, Naboo. There might have been 1 or 2 others, but those were the 3 that I remember. Obviously, they're not there in the original simply because those planets, well, Coruscant and Naboo, they weren't thought of yet, or they hadn't been shown in cinemas yet, so it wouldn't have made much sense. And I kind of agree with that change. I think that was a good change to make because it shows that it wasn't just a small localized conflict, but it was actually a galaxy-wide thing. I mean, when you hear Empire, yes, you think of wider than just a few planets, but this actually gives some visualization to it, so I like that change. Second to last point, it's about a song. It's Yub Nub. Yub Nub was the song that was originally used in episode 6 at the end for the celebrations. I must say I don't rate it, but this is one of those ones you might put down to nostalgia. The special edition released in 97, that was the first episode 6 version I watched, and that had the newer song, which you still have in the current versions. I must say I prefer that. I don't know why. It's just subjective. It's preference. Yub Nub seems a little subdued, maybe. It's jolly and happy and all that. I get that, but I definitely just prefer the newer one. Although, had I watched that originally in the cinema, yeah, maybe my opinion would have been different. This one is probably going down to nostalgia. Final one is the Hayden Christensen edition. Hayden Christensen was added to the Jedi Ghosts scene at the end, or he replaced the original guy. Can't remember the original guy's name, I'm sorry. But yeah, he replaced the original guy as portraying Anakin as like a redeemed Jedi, and Luke obviously sees him and it's cool and all. I must say I don't quite like that. Again, this may be because in the 97 special edition, it's the original guy that's there, and that was the first one I watched, and it made more sense because Anakin had turned to the dark side, but then he'd been redeemed. He'd been redeemed from the dark side, and if you're just rewinding back to the Hayden Christensen Anakin, it's like the redemption never happened, and the redemption was like a key part of the story. The redemption was the story in a way. So I must say I don't quite like that. I think of all the changes, it's probably the one that bothers me most. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's now in the DVDs, DVDs are a thing of the past now, aren't they? It's in the newer releases, so can't really argue too much with it. Yeah, but that's probably the one that bothers me most, the Hayden Christensen change. That will do it for pretty random video. I was out for a walk and I just thought, oh, why not? Because there was so much going through my head about it. It was enjoyable to watch them. If I had to choose a Star Wars edition to watch, obviously it'd be the most recent one. I think the most recent ones are good in terms of graphical quality and all that, and the story's pretty much still the same. I don't have too many qualms. about it. I'm sorry if it was boring. I'm sorry if you wanted me to go, oh, he changed this, he changed that, it was rubbish, but I mean, I'm not that passionate, if you know what I mean. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the gameplay or whatever is in the background. I will see you when I see you.